Significant figures, these are similar to rounding with decimals, but a little bit different. So we know when we round with decimals, we count the number of places starting at the decimal point, and then we think, well, if I need 2, I'm looking at the third digit, and then I say if that digit is 5 or more, I round up. If it's less than 5, I round down, and everything drops away. However, with significant whole numbers, so a significant whole number, we identify the place. So if it says to round to 2 significant figures, I'm looking for my second non-zero number from the left, and then anything after that becomes a 0 if necessary. So we identify the place. If the next digit's 5 or more, round up, and if the next digit is less than 5, we round down. So very much the same as rounding with decimal places. But when rounding off a large value, we then fill the rest of the spaces with zeros. And because we do that, it keeps that place value. If we were to say, drop everything off, it's not going to hold the same place value. So something, if it is like in the thousands, 10,000s, and we round it to 2 significant figures, well, that brings it down to something in the tens, which is not what we're after. It's still a figure in the thousands. So we're rounding to a given number of significant figures. We're then looking at the first significant figure in the number, and it needs to be that non-zero. When we round to significant figures, you start counting from the first digit that's not 0. If it's a large number, we put the zeros in, same as before. And zeros at the end of a whole number or at the beginning are not significant. So especially when we're talking about decimals, so zeros at the beginning of a decimal are not significant because they're holding that place value, and we need those there. So we're looking here, the first one's just with decimal places. So write 246.6157, correct to 3 decimal places. So I go through, here's my third number. My next number is a 7, so we'll round it up. So I get 246.616. That's 7 rounded by 5 up by 1. Now this time it's to 3 significant figures. So I want my first 3 non-zero numbers from the left. So my first 3 non-zero numbers are these ones here. What I then look at is that next number. That next number is 5 or more, so I have to round the 1 up before it. So I get to 247. If you were to put .000, that's fine, but we don't need to because that's where our decimal place was. So the next example here, we're rounding these values to 2 significant figures. So I want my first 2 non-zero numbers. So here I've got 1, 2. My next number is a 7, so that will mean I have to add 1 before it. So I get to 35. Here I have 4,238. Again, I want 2 significant figures. And after these, we could write 2SF, as this tells us where or what we've rounded out number to. So this one here, I've got my first 2 non-zero. My next number is a 3. So if I was rounding to, if that was a decimal place, they would just drop off. However, because I'm doing significant figures and I still need to hold my place value in that 4,000s, these become zeros. They're non-significant. And then I say to 2 significant figures. And lastly here I have a small number. So as I said, I start from the left and I work my way along. Look for my first 2 non-zero numbers. So these are my first 2 non-zero numbers. The next number is a 2. It's less than 5, so they're going to drop away. So I end up with 0.0059 to 2 significant figures. So it does change a little bit when I have a smaller number or a decimal, because I'm looking for, as I've said, those first non-zero numbers. The only thing that might change a little bit is if we look at an example here, if I have 0.0205 and I want to round it to 2 significant figures, I need to be mindful that this 0 in the middle of the 2 and 5 is significant. It holds that place value. So this would end up becoming 0.021 to 2 significant figures. The 5 rounds the 0 up, but that 0 is significant in that instance.